To say that the Ginn was a massive success for Zaft would be quite the understatement. Despite their numerical disadvantage, it had allowed them to fight on more than equal footing with the Earth Alliance. Still, no matter how good of a general machine the Ginn was, the ever-expanding battlefield would soon demand more specialized versions of the Ginn to make the most of it. The first one we'll be having a look at today is arguably one of the most high-performance Ginns of the war, the Ginn High Maneuver type. As its name indicates, this was a Ginn with significantly increased mobility thanks to the thrusters mounted all over its body. And in order to maintain the high reliability that the Ginn became known for, these were all based on tried and true technology. Therefore, most of these extra thrusters were your run-of-the-mill thrusters, and even the brand new high-performance backpack was based on an engine used in many battleships. So servicing these machines was a total breeze. Originally, it was just meant as a stopgap measure between the Ginn and their next generation machine, the Guays. But a combination of high performance, high reliability, and excellent serviceability meant that this machine was quickly able to capture the hearts of its pilots. As a result, demand for this version of the Ginn remained high even after the introduction of the on-paper even higher performance Guays. It is also worth mentioning that despite their extremely positive reception, only a few units were ever produced. As a result, aces were prioritized when it came to assigning these machines, and it became a very desired machine. Even though the high maneuver type was never produced in large numbers, its legacy was enough to ensure further development. Around the same time that the Guays was completed, the Ginn High Maneuver Type 2 also came to be. This unit featured even more and better verniers, a new backpack that featured high mobility over raw power, and also had a new blade that was shaped like a katana. These changes made the High Maneuver Type 2 much more geared towards close combat when compared to the original. Another change was an improved sensor mohawk and a generator that was also capable of powering beam weaponry. As such, they were commonly seen equipped with a beam carbine. Its katana wasn't a beam weapon, but that didn't make it any less deadly. It could still easily slice through a mobile suit, and it has also been said that its origins can be traced back to the same roots as those of the Red Frame's Garbera straight katana. Despite its high performance, priority was given to the much more all-rounded and easier to pilot Guays, and again, only a handful of units were produced that were then given to mostly ace pilots. Unfortunately for the High Maneuver Type 2, it would eventually get a more troubled legacy than its predecessor. Zala loyalists would use these machines to drop the remains of Junius 7 onto Earth, a devastating terrorist attack that would later become known as the Break the World Incident, and would also give the Earth Alliance the perfect pretext to again go to war with the plants, resulting in the Second Bloody Valentine War. よって先の警告通り、地球連合各国は本日午前0時をもって武力によるこれの排除を行うことをプラント現政権に対し通告しました。開戦？そんな。But now back to the beginning of the First Bloody Valentine War. As the fighting in space was quickly turning in the plants' favor, it wouldn't be long before they would need dedicated units for use on Earth. And one of the most successful ones of these was without a doubt the Ginn OCHER, short for Ginn Operation Commando Hard Environment Reinforced. All parts required for space operation were removed, and it was fitted with dust-proof filters on the air intakes, protective seals on the joints, extra armor plating on the feet that could also fold out to provide more stability, a higher performance sensor mohawk, smoke dischargers, and it even came with a special tight beam ultrasonic scanner and pulse compression subsurface radar. Finally, the winged backpack was also replaced by a more hardy backpack that featured a combination of gas turbine generators and batteries to give it a longer operating time than the normal Ginn. For weaponry, it could of course use the standard Ginn weapons, but it would often be seen with the experimental MMI XM17 37.5mm hypervelocity rifle and a heavy axe. This combination of hardened reliability and firepower would ensure that the Ginn OCHER would still see action after the introduction of the Baku and even into the Second Bloody Valentine War. However, aside from that, most of their action would consist of guarding bases and as a worker unit, something that the OCHER probably excelled at thanks to its longer operational time. In the sea then, we first got the Ginn Fighter Experimental Maneuver in Water and Surface, or FAMUS for short. Unlike the previously mentioned units, this was a heavily modified machine that would eventually lead to the development of a brand new mobile suit, the Goon. Because of this, it would also retroactively be known as the Proto-Goon. For weapons, the FAMUS came with 2 built-in 7-barrel torpedo launchers on the arms, and it was sometimes also equipped with a 47mm dart launcher for extra firepower. Next up was the Ginn WASP, or the Ginn Water Adapted Search and Patrol. But unlike its name indicated, it seems that this unit was made mostly to serve as support for ZAF's other marine units as opposed to a scouting unit. Even though they could only operate up to a depth of 100 meters, it was relatively easy to convert one of the many normal Ginns into a Ginn WASP, allowing them to quickly expand their underwater forces. Just as the OCHER, all space equipment was removed, this time to make room for underwater equipment. Waterproof seals were applied to the joints, the backpack was replaced, hydrojet engines were mounted throughout the chassis, and it received a variety of sensors such as a passive sonar array, an ultra-long-wave data communication system, the so-called Lorenzini sensors, which were electric field sensors that worked in a very similar way to a shark's sensory organs, and a towed sonar array. In terms of weapons then, it typically used the MMI TT-04 405mm Mark II multi-purpose torpedo launcher, which fired rocket-propelled torpedoes that worked well both in water and on the ground. But some units were also seen with a rocket dart launcher and even phonon maser cannons, a weapon that would become standard on many of ZAF's later amphibious machines. Even though it wasn't the greatest amphibious mobile suit ever, its ease of production and probably also maintenance would ensure its continued use, and it would be further upgraded to the Ginn WASP Custom during the Second Bloody Valentine War. This unit was visually identical, but featured improved Lorenzini sensors and various other internal upgrades that increased its cruising range. In disguise then, we had the Ginn Tactical Air Reconnaissance type. This so-called TAR type had 2 main goals. The first one was, as its name indicated, to serve as a flying recon unit, but its second and perhaps most important goal was to test out various technologies. In order to make it more stealthy, it was painted with radar-absorbing paint, some parts of the armor were rounded to better deflect radar waves, and it was also outfitted with ZAF's first attempt at copying the Earth Alliance's Mirage colloid system, a high-tech system that would turn the mobile suit using it almost completely invisible to both the naked eye and radar. The problem, however, was that this copy of the Mirage colloid was far from perfect. Unlike the original, this Mirage colloid could only completely conceal the TAR type when it stood completely still. As soon as it moved, small portions would be unhidden, ruining its invisibility. And to make matters worse, during flight it was just straight up unusable. Its second piece of experimental tech then was equally disastrous. Developed before the capture of the G-weapons, the JDP-3 MMX-50 Experimental Close Combat Beam Assault Rifle was ZAF's first attempt at creating a mobile suit-sized beam rifle. The result was an anemic beam that could only serve to blind the enemy pilot, after which the TAR type could take them out with either the standard heavy assault machine gun or the lance that was mounted onto the rifle and functioned as a pile bunker. When your quote-unquote bayonet works better than your actual rifle, you know you done goofed. Its most successful piece of experimental tech then was the backpack. It granted the Ginn independent flight capabilities, and the data gathered from it would be used to develop ZAF's first dedicated aerial machine, the Din. In addition to wings and turbojet engines, it also featured the Baku Tactical Reconnaissance Type's head and sensor array, which would slide over the Ginn's own head, a feature that would also be carried over to the future Din. Given the different times that all of these technologies were available, it is very possible that multiple versions of the TAR type existed. The most clear example of this would be the experimental Mirage colloid system. Time-wise, it simply makes the most sense for the Din to have either been completed or nearing completion by the time that this system could have been implemented. And finally, one of my favorite Ginns is the long-range reconnaissance type. With its upgraded sensor mohawk, sensor radomes, and various other equipment, this Ginn excelled at search, rescue, and reconnaissance missions. To aid with the long operational times and operational expertise that these missions often required, this was one of the few mobile suits to be outfitted with a twin-seater cockpit. This way, the pilot could focus on flying the Ginn, with the co-pilot taking care of all of the sensors and the scanners. In this role, the long-range reconnaissance type was famously used to search for the missing Lacus Klein, the daughter of then Supreme Council leader Siegel Klein. But other than these more passive missions, its sensors also made the long-range reconnaissance type a very formidable sniping machine, and therefore many units would be outfitted with sniper rifles. And those were all of the Ginn variants that we currently know about. Let me know down below which one is your favorite. For me, it's definitely the Ginn high maneuver type, with the Ginn long-range reconnaissance type in combination with a sniper rifle being a close second. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe for more similar content in the future. As always, a big thank you to the Patreon supporters. I hope everyone watching has a great day, and I'll see you all next time.